If it's brown, lay down. If it's black, fight back. That little piece of information will tell you what kind of bear it is and how to survive. Gene, yes, you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that's how I dealt with my diarrhea last week.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Oak Tree Woman Ripley.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and special events. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So, Gene, this week we are reviewing a very special commission. We're recording this on Father's Day. And a couple of our listeners who've been great to us throughout the years, Josh, Adam, and John, who've commissioned, too many movies that I can't even remember. They came to us and they said, we would love to do a very special commission for the 1988 slapstick family vacation comedy, The Great Outdoors.
When they wrote in and said, "Hey, Shat Crew, thanks again for taking another movie request. Unfortunately, this is one we didn't want to make. Like so many families dealing with the coronavirus, we were personally affected with the loss of our father. While of course this was a trying time for our family, we thought, hey, we like movies, and our dad liked movies. What better way to honor him than a Shat review of a movie that not only reminds us of our childhood with him, but also one he loved, 1988's The Great Outdoors. Now, from a movie standpoint, it's not perfect. It's a little formulaic, and the timing is sometimes awkward. But it also had a lot going for it. John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, 80s summertime nostalgia, bald bears, something for the whole family. Thematically, however, our childhood shared a lot of parallels with it, which is why it hits so close to home for us. Our lake house was a condo in Indian Rocks Beach, Florida. Both our parents were teachers who had the summers off, so every summer we'd spend a week or two there doing all the things great childhood memories are made of. Being outside, swimming, eating out, shout out to the gone but not forgotten Kapok Tree, theme parks, shout out to the underrated Adventure Island, blockbuster summer movies, and awkwardly learning about the opposite sex. Our dad also had a lot of qualities of John Candy's character, and sometimes even Dan Aykroyd's, which led to countless great, if often embarrassing or self-deprecating, memories. For all these reasons and more, we think The Great Outdoors is a fitting tribute film, and we're honored to have you review it. So to Shat, have at it, and thanks again. You continue to bring a weekly spark in your listeners' lives, especially during these trying times. And to Dad, we love you, and thanks for the memories. Sure, you may have never gotten the chance to eat an old 96er, but we know if you had, for us, you would have tried. Always the best, Adam, Josh, and John R.
Well, Mr. R, it is Father's Day, and if you're somewhere out there listening, we hope we can do The Great Outdoors justice.
And also I want to bring up that when Adam contacted us about this movie, they've commissioned so many movies. I said, we can't take your money for this. This is a very special occasion. And he said, well, I'm going to send you the money and you do with it as you will. If you want to donate it, you can choose to. So we've discussed it and we've thought that a fitting charity to donate your commission in honor of your father would be to the Boys and Girls Club. Because this movie, if anything, really hit home for me the importance of role models, parents in their kids' lives. And a lot of times kids don't appreciate the time that they spend with the adults around them. And a lot of kids don't have it. So In honor of your father, we will be taking your commission and donating it to the local Boys and Girls Club.
The Great Outdoors is a 1988 slapstick comedy film written and produced by John Hughes. It stars Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, and Annette Bening in her film debut. It follows two families spending time on vacation in Wisconsin. The New York Times reported that the film did not have enough collective energy to light a campfire. The Los Angeles Times called the film a crass, blah comedy about summer vacation perils. And according to the Washington Post, imagine that it's raining cats and dogs and you're locked in the Northwoods cabin for weeks with the people you like least, and you'll pretty much have a feel for what it's like to sit through this movie. The Great Outdoors grossed $43 million worldwide against a budget of $24 million. Now, guys, I had never seen The Great Outdoors before, and there's a good reason for that. There was a series of what I considered boring mainstream Midwestern movies that never interested me as a kid. There was Groundhog Day, all of the National Lampoon vacation movies, and The Great Outdoors. And I realized listening to Josh and John and Adam's letter that the reason why is I had no way to relate. I grew up in New York City and Arizona as a child of an immigrant. So I didn't get to go to pro sporting events. There was no camping, certainly no cabins or fishing or lakeside resorts. And Big D, honestly, the closest I got to any of this was summer camp at the Boys and Girls Club in Tempe, Arizona. Nice. So I'm going to really lean on you guys to tell me if any of this stuff is even close to real.
Yeah, this is a movie that kind of joins those hundreds of movies that I remember watching with my own dad. I mean, we watched this probably hundreds of times in my house growing up. And I remember my family always thought it was really funny. So as a kid, I just assumed that this is what funny is, right? This is what comedy is. And it hit close to home for me growing up because we used to vacation every year in the Smoky Mountains. We would drive up. It's a 9-hour drive from New Orleans, and we would drive up there and vacation. And so it reminded me, we didn't have a lake house per se, but we had a cabin. And as an adult, I'm not sure I get the appeal of this kind of comedy the way I did when I was a kid. But as a kid, like I said, this is like one of those movies I remember that started teaching me what funny was supposed to be. And it was really fun to get to go back and revisit it.
So much like Adam, Josh, and John, I felt a connection to this movie. I don't know that I truly felt it when I first watched it, which I couldn't tell you when it was, but going back and watching it now, it triggered so many memories in my life. So I grew up about 15 minutes north of New York City, but my parents had a little piece of land in upstate New York that my grandfather had bought. They built a tiny shed on it, and over the years, we would go up and make improvements. So every Friday, we would load up in the station wagon, and we would drive 2 hours north up into Ulster County, into the Catskills, into a town called Mount Tremper. So now this place had no TV. There was no cable, no internet. There was nothing. The closest mall was 30 minutes away. There was a one-screen movie theater. The main thing you would do in town in the summer was they would let out water from the reservoir, and it would kind of flood this river, the Esopus Creek. So you would go get a truck inner tube, you'd fill it up with air, and you'd go jump into the water and ride this river downstream. At the time, I did not appreciate it. I felt trapped. But now going back and thinking about those times that you're forced to be with the family are some of my most precious memories.
So, guys, I never had the joy of going to the cabin up in the mountains or getting away from it all as a kid. Do you think, like, today you would enjoy that sort of thing? Or more importantly, do you think your families would survive, like, a week up there away from everything? No TV, no internet?
So every Thanksgiving, we always go out into hill country here in Texas, and we always get a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi, which is why when y'all were doing Watchmen, I had to drive out to the middle of a field 35 minutes away to call in to leave a voicemail that week. And so we survive. I mean, nature's scary, but yeah, I mean, I think it's appealing to unplug, and it's good for the kids. I mean, my 2-year-old, had an absolute panic attack the other day because her iPad died, and she just had this huge temper tantrum about our iPad being dead. So I think it's necessary to do this kind of shit every once in a while, or we're all just going to have psychotic children.
Yeah, I agree. I think we do Thanksgiving as well, but people are on their phones. I think this year I'm going to sabotage the internet because my father would have no fucking clue how to fix the router. If I just did something to the power source or even just hit it or just cut one of the wires, I think it might make for a either the best Thanksgiving or the last Thanksgiving. So I think I'm going to try that this year.
Yeah, you're like the Khmer Rouge of the Ebert family. I appreciate it. All right, let's wind the clock back to 1988, take a trip out to the mountains, and hit that trailer.
All right.
This is Chet.
You remember me, Chet Ripley?
How you doing?
This is his family.
You can run around here naked as a bear and not worry about running into anybody.
This is Roman.
What a gas.
This is his family.
I'm waiting for the heads to rotate around and vomit pea soup.
They're about to spend 1 week together in the great outdoors.
We weren't invited.
They'll be tickled to death to see us.
Who invited him anyway?
But this is no holiday.
The man is an ass.
This is war.
You wouldn't know a good time if it fell out of the sky, landed on your face, and started to wiggle.
Are you going to argue, or are you going to enjoy yourself?
His wife, Connie, and their 2 sons, Buck and Ben, are enjoying their vacation at a lake resort until Connie's glamorous sister, Kate, played by Annette Bening, her investment broker husband, Roman Craig, played by Dan Aykroyd, and their mostly silent twin daughters, Mara and Cara, crash the vacation. Ghost stories after the family barbecue include one of a man-eating grizzly bear that Chet met face-to-face when he was younger. When he fired at it with a shotgun, the buckshot shaved the hair off the top of the bear's head, and from that day on, it was known as the bald-headed bear of Clare County.
So as the movie starts, my first mismemory, my first false memory was that this was like a family cabin. I thought, okay, they're going up to their cabin in the woods. No, it is a resort that they go to. And this cabin, it's fantastic. They try to make it seem like it's, oh, there's fish around and the toilet seat's missing, but it's perfect to me. It is designed for a large family or group of friends. There's everything. You got the lake. The town seems cool. It doesn't seem too backwards. There's a fair going on. There's a lot of shops. As an adult now, I'm like, holy shit, how can I Airbnb this house? This would be a perfect vacation.
Yeah, I just got back from Mexico, like my first adult trip to Mexico, and I went to San Felipe, and basically that trip consisted of riding go-karts to a beach with like half-finished buildings that have been rotting for the last decade and pulling teeth out of dead dolphins. Like, this seems way cooler. This place has water sports. There's a fucking go-kart track.
Oh, yes.
Restaurants, creepy mine. There's just bears roaming around, that gorgeous tree line that, John Candy points out. Being an Arizonan, a place like this is priceless. I would love to spend, my summer up at this resort.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that there's something really unique about the setting for this. And, when I got married, we got money from Tom's grandmother. Her gift was like a very large amount of money to pay for a honeymoon for us. And we could have done that. But I mean, Tom and I both have traveled extensively all over the world. And it was like, we don't want to do that. So like we got a cabin very similar to this. Like it was a big resort also in the Smoky Mountains because it was close. We drove up there and we got this huge cabin and we just stayed there and we had a view of like this creek and like all the things there. Like we played like mini golf and we went to this weird arcade and we hiked and we did all the things and it was fantastic. And I think that what I like about this kind of thing is I think there's a difference between you grow up and you learn, you take things from your family and you change certain things from your family. And I think the biggest difference between my family and I is the way that we vacation. Because as a grown up now, I'm totally different than the types of vacations we had when we were kids. Because my mom and dad can't stand to sit still. And so when we would go on trips, like they would book us from like dawn until like we went to sleep. We never stopped. And I am not about that now. I don't mind a few activities, like totally love to do things like the go-karts or the skiing or whatever. But give me a vacation like this on a lake. Let me kayak, let me hike, let me relax. And I think like now in my adulthood, I judge my vacation with how much reading I can get done. If it's less than 2 books, I think that I'm too busy. And I can tell you on my honeymoon, I read 6. So it was perfect.
Yeah, and this movie, it made me think of all the times that my parents took us places that we didn't want to go. I remember Cape Cod. We went for like a 3-day weekend, and I was miserable. I was a bitching, moaning little brat because I wanted to be home with my friends doing whatever the fuck we were going to do instead of actually going there. And now I think back, I'm like, holy shit, that was great. Every parent then hopes that their kids will have these experiences. And then one day, like you said, Ash, do it for their kids. And we're coming up here now in 2 weeks, 4th of July weekend. I've mentioned it before in the podcast that I have a friend, Jeff, whose parents have a lake house in Fairplay, South Carolina. It is right on the water. It is a gorgeous house. And for I think 10 straight years, there was a group of 10, sometimes 15 people on the 4th. We would go up there. We'd all pitch in $150. We'd go buy a ton of booze, food, everything. We would turn our phones off and we would spend the next 4 days sitting there on the lake. Some would be out in a jet ski. Some would be reading a book. Some would be watching a movie. It was the highlight of every single year because you could disconnect. We didn't do it for the last 2 years. Obviously, COVID, and then the year before, something happened with the family. We're going up in 2 weeks. I'm as excited for Emma to now experience that. Sitting on the dock, going out on the boat, go on a jet ski, go catch lightning bugs, go do all that shit. I'm more excited now as a dad trying to give that to her than I am sitting there pounding beers on the sandbar, listening to fucking whatever's playing on the radio.
I think what you guys are highlighting here, though, between the two of you is that difference between travel and vacations. Are you going traveling or are you taking a vacation? And I sit on the travel side of things. I can't do vacations. And I'm so nervous because I have a trip coming up in October to Cancun. And it's getting on a plane in Phoenix, landing in Mexico, getting shuttled straight to the resort. And then basically I'm responsible for nothing for 4 days. I'm going to lose my mind, people. I'm like, what do you do? They're like, well, if you get up in the morning, you can go to the front desk, your concierge, and reserve one of the Bali beds. It's sitting right on the beach. You could take your favorite book. They'll bring you your drinks. They'll bring you snacks. And all you do is relax and watch the waves and read a book. I will get through about 20 minutes of that and I'll lose it. If I wanted to read a book, I would just stay home. Vacations can get fucked. I want to do something. And my biggest regret, though, is as a big traveler, is that I spent a lot of times going to museums. And now as an adult, I realize that's fucking stupid. Fuck museums. Don't go to museums. Because I realize now my thing is just touching, smelling, looking at, tasting everything around me. I'm not going to go lick walls and shit, but you know what I'm saying? That's the thing that I missed out on in life is I was trying to feed my brain. I wasn't feeding the other senses. That's all I want to do now is just go places and just experience that place.
Yeah, but you can do that and read a fucking book. You can do both.
Yeah, on the flight. Yeah.
You could do both. And I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would go nuts if we literally just sat there for a week. But
okay.
I agree. There needs to be some doing, but traveling, I can't imagine traveling with kids. I can only vacation with kids because traveling with kids, fucking waste of money.
Yeah, but getting back to the movie, John Candy, we've seen him in several different roles now doing Shat The Movies. And I like that. I feel like every time he does a movie, there's something different going on. In my memory, John Candy always played the same guy. He was the guy from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But he's really not. He's incredibly diverse. He's still that big, lovable guy. But here he's kind of cool. He's a little less quirky. And he's the guy we're rooting for. He is the main character. And I think he's making a meal out of this John Hughes script. The script is not perfect, but there's enough there to work with. And you see that when he's doing the story of the bald-headed bear of Clare County. And all I could think about while he was doing it is what other actors in the 80s could have been up for this role? And immediately that dad who's taking his family to the lake vacation, I think Chevy Chase. And God, could you imagine how royally he would have fucked this scene?
Yeah, I think this is John Candy. It has to be one of my favorite roles. A lot of times I've complained. I hate Chris Farley because he's always down by the river. He's always on. He's always trying to fat guy in a little coat. There's never a point where he just kind of takes off that bullshit where you don't ever see who he is. John Candy in this movie, he is flawed. He's funny. He's loving. He is a really good dad and husband. There's no shtick to him. This is what I imagine John Candy, the man, was like. If you hung out with him and his family, I could picture him being like this. And he's got some lines. It says, and I said it's Father's Day. They just hit me in the heart where he's trying to hug his son who's like, Dad, get away. You're embarrassing me. He says, you're never too old for hugs. I always say to Emma, hugs are free. Get over here. And she's like, no. I'm like, you have no choice. Get over here.
Well, after Roman pulls Chet around the lake with his rented speedboat, tensions between the families erupt. Chet is ready to go home, even as Buck tries to romance a local girl, Cammie. The budding romance goes well until Chet is challenged to eat the 96-ounce steak at a family dinner, which causes Buck to break their date. Buck tries to apologize to Cammie for being late, but Cammie refuses to speak with him.
So there's this really self-indulgent scene in this part of the movie, which is not a great outdoors thing. It's like an 80s comedy thing where they let scenes go on like 5 minutes past when they should have stopped. And that is the water skiing scene in this movie. So you've got this crazy skinny stunt double for John Candy that's
Great
in
legs.
like some weird fat suit with like great muscular calves sticking out of his khakis. And at first it was funny. It was a funny scene at first, and it's fine. It's a gag. But then it just keeps going and going. And as I was sitting there in the 20-minute segment watching, I kept thinking about like how weird water skiing is. And I don't know about either of you, if either of you are skiers. So I love snow skiing. Snow skiing is like one of my favorite things to do. And I'm actually pretty proficient at snow skiing, but water skiing, one, I'm terrible at it. And two, you just feel like you're on display because it's much like what happens here in this movie. So you stand at the back of a boat and everybody in the boat's watching you and everybody in the other boats are watching you. And it's just this weird peeping Tom feeling like as you're up there sucking. And I don't know. Are either of you any good at doing this?
Have you fucking seen me? It is physically impossible for me to stay on top of the water. It's like physically impossible, okay? So I've tried it like 3 times. And the problem is they have to get you up on top of the water. So they have to go fast enough, but not too fast that they yank you out of the water. Hell no. I tried it 3 times. I suck. Now, physics and gravity actually help me in snow skiing. Mm-hmm. So just get me, I'm okay with that because it's actually pulling me downhill. But to get me to stay on top of the water, impossible.
But, Ash, you mentioned how much time they waste on this, water skiing scene. As an adult, the time that they spend on kid romances, which every 80s summer movie seems to have one, sometimes it feels unnecessary. But as a kid, I would like daydream about meeting a girl while visiting a small town. And if I had seen this movie as a kid, Cammie would have ruined me for life. She's pretty, she's tough, she's independent, she's clever. And I wish they wouldn't have made her fold so quickly because I liked how mean she was. Like she had that vibe like Marion from Raiders of the Lost Ark that I absolutely love. And I felt like she became too malleable too quickly.
I don't know. I love this part of 80s summer movies because like Vacation Love as a kid, like I think like super nostalgic for that kind of thing. I mean, I had 2 very prolific vacation romances growing up. One was in the Smokies and one was an employee at Disney World. He worked on the It's a Small World ride. And I have to tell you, like, they're life-changing. Like, they're life-changing because you're young and you're growing up and coming of age. And as our commissioner said, you're awkwardly learning about the opposite sex. And I don't know. They're also like what you judge all relationships on because like those relationships, like the relationships in your teens, like they're so passionate and they're dramatic and they're, they feel like you're going to die if that person doesn't talk to you anymore. And it's just kind of incredible. And just want to give a quick shout out to Joey and Blake, my 2 vacation loves. If you're listening, if you're out there, find me on Twitter. I loved falling in love with you for 2 weeks and I loved breaking up with both of you over the phone once I got home. And I hope you're out there and you found somebody that stuck around. It was fun. It was fun. I can't believe that neither of you had this. I mean, Gene, I do not believe you didn't have a vacation love.
No, I was a fat nerd. The closest I got to it is at Christopher Creek, Arizona. I watched a girl brush her teeth every morning from down the creek.
I have so much to say about that. Off air.
Did you have sex with him, or you just hooked up? Like, what'd you do?
I was like 13 and 14 years old, so no.
Okay.
No, she wasn't having sex till she was 15.
Over
That's
the
right.
pants, under the pants. It was like PG, like that kind of romance.
I mean, the Smokies one was pretty PG. The Disney one, there was some heavy petting on the Haunted Mansion.
Heavy petting. My dad
You
will be
know,
proud.
heavy petting on the Haunted Mansion. Nothing wrong with that. You know, when it spins around and it gets real
Oh, yeah.
dark.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it makes that noise that Big D makes when he nuts. Okay, guys, we're almost a half hour into this recording, and we got to talk about the 96er because people are going to be like, why haven't you talked about the 96er? So the 96er, for people who haven't seen this movie or don't remember, it's a 96-ounce steak, as we mentioned. And I did the math on this, and it doesn't seem so bad because 96 ounces is 6 pounds. And when you cook it, you lose about a quarter of that. So you're getting down to like 4.5 pounds. And I think if I had like 2 hours, I could probably kill like a 4.5 pound steak. It's just mostly protein and fat. But I do, in this movie, they force John Candy to eat the gristle and the fat too, which I don't think should be included in the weight of the steak. Because he doesn't have to eat the bones. I think it's doable.
Yeah, I mean, so I was vegetarian for 7 years, and to this day, I still have trouble eating red meat, and gristle and fat really gross me out. So it would be a hard pass for me, like on the challenge. And like, I have trouble eating like a 6-ounce fillet. That's a lot of meat for me.
Yeah, I'm not a big meat fan, but recently, probably about 45 days ago, Gene did the first Shat The Movies fitness challenge. So something was triggered in me that I said, I'm going to make a life change. So at that point, I decided, I said, hey, I'm going to try it. I'm going to cut out red meat. I'm going to cut out pork. I'm just going to eat fish and chicken. So I've been doing that for 45 days. I've had pretty good results so far. I lost 30 pounds. So I'm on the right path. But as I consider myself still a fat guy. I'm a recovering fat guy. I'm offended that a lot of times these movies think that just because somebody's a big fat guy, that they're going to be good at these eating challenges. That is not correct. You know, just like if you say white men can't jump, some can jump, maybe not that good. Fat guys, it doesn't mean we could all eat. I once tried to enter an eating contest. In my town of Mamaroneck, there's a famous hot dog stand. It's not Nathan's. It's called Walter's. Great hot dog. So they did a 4th of July hot dog eating contest. I was maybe 14, 15. I was in my prime eating days. I mean, I was a house. The metabolism was still going. I was still a chunky kid, but I could eat. I'm like, I'm going to kick the shit out of these people. I got to the 7-dog plateau, and it was like 12 minutes you had, and I could not go anymore. If you look at like the professional eaters, like Kobayashi or Joey Chestnut, the skinnier people seem to do better. So I don't think they should just assume that John Candy's going to win this because he doesn't look like a big eater.
I think everyone's got their secret food, though. Like, everyone's got a food that they can eat infinity of.
Crawfish.
Ash, I got to tell you something, and you're going to be very ashamed of me, but I was at the grocery store yesterday, and there was a 10-pound bag of frozen, pre-cooked, and seasoned crawfish. But listen, it was Boudreaux brand. So they got me with the marketing. And then I looked and I was like, where is it made? And it said Louisiana. And I was like, great. So I bought it. I brought it home. It's in the freezer. As I'm putting it away, it says made from crawfish farmed in Egypt. So just so we got this right, some guy in Louisiana or gal decided to import farm-raised crawfish from Egypt to Louisiana, boil it, season it, freeze it, ship it to Arizona. I'm going to eat it this week. I'll let you know how it goes.
It's from fucking North Louisiana, which means that you might as well have bought it in Michigan. I'm so disappointed in you.
Sorry.
Can
I eat it all in one sitting? That's the question.
Yes, probably. And it would still probably be delicious if it was seasoned, right?
I don't know how delicious crawfish are, but I am also not a fan of bats. So when we get to this scene, I can't do that.
Keep it. Don't take it out. Hold on. Leave it in.
What about the last podcast where you said
I'm not good with crawfish, but bats either.
Okay, so in the last movie where we were talking about the suicide attempt, and you said there's a season for every life, and I said, you're right. Speaking of seasons, the summer's right in the corner.
Oh my god, it's fucking the ghost of Roger Roper coming in.
It's so good. So crawfish and bats. Yeah, we get to this ridiculous bat scene, right? Okay. And it's predictable. You can see it's coming, but I still found myself loving it because I think it's relatable. I've had an incident where there was a bird in the house. It got through the cat door. And we also, you get like the net, you get the whatever you're trying to do to corral it. We didn't want to hurt it. But bats, I think, creep most people out. And even though it wasn't as realistic that they're going to go around smashing things, but the family's reaction, like, oh, it's bigger than I thought it was going to be. No, I'm not going to go. You go. That rang so true to me.
Okay, sir. The judgment for bats. So bats are my favorite animal. They're by far my spirit animal. I think they're amazing. They're horribly misunderstood. They protect us from all the mosquitoes. Like, we would be overrun by fucking mosquitoes if it weren't for bats. They're lovely animals, and I rescue them often from our solarium. They get caught in there, and they're precious, and they're tiny. And this one time, it went on my shoulder, and I don't cry often, guys. That is not a thing I do. And I cried because I felt like, we had a moment, me and this bat, and Tom was just standing inside screaming that I was going to get rabies. But I just about died with excitement. And you don't need a net and you don't need a bat. You just put a little towel over them and then you release them and you let them go. And they're not creepy. They're glorious creatures.
No, but I felt like the animal gags in this movie were like its weakest point, though. They were so predictable. The second I saw the bat, I'm like, we're going to see a scene where they gather household items and wear them like armor, and they have some sort of weapons that they fashion out of things around the cabin. And they did exactly that. The leeches, that was straight out of Stand By Me. And then, of course, you had like the raccoons. And the fact that people laughed at this in the 80s makes me just embarrassed for America.
Well, and let's talk about the fucking raccoons, right? So there's this thing in a lot of John Hughes movies and in 80s comedies in general where I feel like they get like really self-indulgent with gags, with running gags. And the best example, like if anyone ever asks me to explain what that is, I'm going to go the fucking raccoon gag from The Great Outdoors, because it goes on forever. And from the very first scene, like even the first interaction, it's not funny. How did nobody cut this out in the editing process?
And for people who haven't seen the movie, it's not like the raccoons have a voiceover or anything. It's literally raccoons running around and then they just have subtitles, but they're like, let's knock over the trash can so the fat guy has to clean it all up.
Yeah,
that's it.
I think this was an 80s thing, because if you talking animals, if you think back to like Caddyshack, the gopher, I don't remember. I know he dances, but I think they might have done like some exposition, some text, but it was just the height of humor. Did you guys make it all the way to the very end of the credits?
I stopped at the dance thing at the end with the credits.
They throw in an end of credits raccoon scene. Okay. And there they name the bear. The bear is named Jody. So one of the raccoons says, hey, what's Jody doing down by the water? And the other one goes, hey, you didn't hear? They shot her ass off. And all the raccoons laugh and it fades to black.
Again, when Big D says this, it's not the raccoons talking. It's just words on the screen that don't match up with any particular raccoon.
No. Well, they do make that noise or whatever. It kind of sounds like a weird dolphin. And I don't know if that's what a raccoon sounds like.
Sounded pretty good to me.
Connie and Kate bond at a local bar, and Roman reveals he heard Chet and their father-in-law describing how they think Roman is a crooked businessman. Roman offers Chet a $25,000 investment opportunity. Chet invests, and Roman and his family head back to Chicago. On the car ride home, Kate praises Roman for including Chet in the investment, noting that $25,000 is a lot of money for them. Roman suddenly stops the car and turns back to the cabin to confess the story about the wedding conversation never happened and reveal that he is broke.
So I know that this is John Candy's movie. I think we all can agree to that. But guys, I loved Dan Aykroyd in this, and I loved him the longer the movie went on. He just got better and better. I think he's pretty funny in it. He's cold, he's schmarmy, but in like a really funny way. His clothes are ridiculous. The lines he delivers, they feel ad-libbed, and I mean that as a compliment. They felt like they were something that like Dan Aykroyd came up with on the spot that were just really funny. And I think this is such a better performance than Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. Like, this is the Dan Aykroyd from like Blues Brothers that I love.
Totally agree. This, Blues Brothers, Grosse Point Blank, those are the movies where Aykroyd is doing what he does best. Fast talking, cold, factual, and I kind of equate him to like the darker spirit of the Midwest, right? You've got your Marge Gundersons and you've got your Dan Aykroyds, the guy who thinks quick, the guy who talks quick, the guy who is really that other side, that the Chicago to the Minneapolis, and I thought he was great in this.
Yeah, I think this is him. Like I said, John Candy. This is John Candy. I think this is Dan Aykroyd. If you remember the other movie we did with him, Tommy Boy. In Tommy Boy, he plays like the owner of that big auto parts store that's going to put the Callahan Auto Parts out of business. And he's that slimy businessman. This might be who he is. And I thought the relationship that they all shared was great. The marriage with Annette Bening, with Kate, great. I loved it. They felt genuine. But Kate is all about the money. Dan Aykroyd's character, I think he brags about how much he has, but he doesn't really depend on it. I think that Roman did not mention the fact that he had lost his seat, which again, may be a joke or tied back to, trading places when they lose the seat on the exchange, that maybe this was an inside joke. But I think without a doubt, in the movie, there is no way that Kate, as his wife, will take downsizing. If they move in with Chet, there is no doubt that marriage is over. She's gone.
All I can think about with the Kate character, though, is that's Annette Bening.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's her first movie, but what a fucking waste. I mean, Annette Bening in The Grifters and American Beauty. This is an Academy Award nominated actor, and she's been reduced to like this insulting little role. She mostly just glared and went, a lot. I couldn't get down with it.
No, I agree. And what made me the saddest was her involvement in the dance sequence and the after credits, because like Dan Aykroyd is going nuts and he's really funny, and John Candy's wife is out there and she's pretty funny. And then like they keep cutting back to Annette Bening sipping on a martini and doing some weird like finger guns, like pointing at him like, hey, and winking. Like, it's like, come on. It's fucking Annette Bening. Like, let her get out there.
Fucking John Candy looked like he was done with that shit too, though. I'm not even sure he was in the same room. I think they just filmed him separately and added it on.
Yeah.
Well, during a thunderstorm, Kate discovers the twins have wandered off. Chet and Roman find them at the bottom of an old mine shaft, but the claustrophobic Roman is reluctant to descend into the tiny space. After some encouragement from Chet, Roman climbs down into the mine while Chet goes in search of a rope to pull them out. Upon realizing that the mine is stocked with old dynamite, Roman takes his daughters and climbs out of the shaft on his own.
Okay. As a parent, you're supposed to sacrifice for your kids. You're supposed to protect them at all costs. And this is really true for me. Like, I would lay down my life for children, for the children, well, not all children, the ones that I personally have given birth to, right?
Not the British children.
No, none of those. But I would lay down my life for my kids in a heartbeat. Unless it's a wasp. And let me explain to you what I mean about this. So, like, I have this horrible phobia of wasps. I hate them. They have a personal vendetta against me. They find me anywhere. I opened my car door the other day. One flew in my car and just stung me. I'll be at the park. The one will just land on me and sting me. Like, I mean, like, they truly have a collective vendetta against me. And because of that, like, I get frozen when I see them. And I've frozen and like watched them fly near my kids and panicked and been unable to move. Like, in my head, I'm like, go, but I can't because I'm fucking frozen in fear. And so I would like to believe that if my kids, approached a nest, that I would sacrifice myself and be able to move, but I'm dubious of it. And so I get this scene where like Dan Aykroyd has this like intense claustrophobia and him being reticent for that moment, like that check to go down into the shaft. And I know this is a comedy, but I felt seen. And I'm sure Big D's going to share some story about how like he, built some beautiful thing for Emma to save her life once and make me feel like a shit parent. But I related to Dan Aykroyd here.
No, yes, I've thought about it before. Like if there was like a lion, I would charge at the lion without hesitation to save Emma. But that claustrophobic thing, I'm not a huge fan. Do you remember Baby Jessica in '87? Because you're a Texas native.
I was 4, and I'm not a Texas native. I grew up in New Orleans.
But yes, I understand. But you live there now. I figure it's in the Texas folklore that people have to talk about this. But for people who are out there that don't remember, in '87, a little girl, hence her name, Baby Jessica, she was visiting an aunt in Midland, Texas. She like fell into, it was like maybe like a little bit bigger than a coffee can size pipe. Like it was like some kind of like a well. She went into the well and fell 45 feet down, right? So the baby Jessica, she's missing. People hear crying. They come out, oh, where is she? They go and find her. This became like the first 24-hour coverage on all the news. Like, the girl in the well, baby Jessica, will she survive? And they eventually dug down like an adjacent shaft and they ended up pulling her out, right? They kept her busy. They were playing Winnie the Pooh songs and shit, but I was riveted. It was like the OJ chase. Like, you just had to watch to see how this thing was going to end. I don't know, even though I would kill a lion, I would do anything, that I could go down like a sewer pipe or something like that. Besides physically fitting, I think I would have a panic attack. I think I would freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait. She's at the bottom of a well?
So it was like again, about a little bigger than a coffee can. The baby, her head could fit in it. She slid down 45 feet. So you couldn't dig in the top because the soil would fall in. You couldn't reach and get her because she fell too far, but you could hear her crying and she was wedged in the pipe 45 feet underground.
They didn't have a fucking rope?
She's a fucking baby. What, with baby hands, what's she going to do? Grab the rope? She was an infant.
I don't know. I've tried taking toys from babies before and they could fucking grip those things.
She was an infant, but the other danger was you could dislodge her. She could fall further down.
What if you just... Oh, so they couldn't fill it with water and just have her float up to the top?
No. Okay, you should not have children. Don't think again.
I'm sure there's a documentary out there that Big D can find for us to watch on baby Jessica.
Right now, I feel like that legislator who put the ice in the bucket of water and was like, look, it doesn't displace. Oh, shit, it does. No one's getting that reference because nobody watches C-SPAN. It was really funny.
No. So again, wells, that would do me in, so I don't know that I could save her. But as this movie goes on, I found myself realizing how different it was from a lot of other comedies. I talked about already Chris Farley. That Chris Farley, the fact that he's a big, sweaty, fat guy is the core of most of his movies. There's never a moment that goes by that we don't see him ripping his coat. He doesn't fit in a seat, or he's sweaty or running into glass doors multiple times. In this movie, not once is John Candy the butt of the joke because he's fat. Even when he does the eating competition, it's because he wants to impress his family. He's trying to win it. He doesn't care. Nobody says, hey, come on, look at that gut. And it was so nice that a fat guy could just be a fat guy.
Dude, I think this is like an 80s thing too, because remember Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, they also did not make fun of the fact that he was fat. Or like Bluto in Animal House, they're not making fun of him for being fat. He is, overweight, but that's not the point. And beyond that, in the 80s, they were kind of allowing bigger guys to be sexy. You get a scene here where John Candy is, coming on to his wife, and you can feel why someone would be attracted to a larger person. He's big. He's there's so much of him. And he's just I was okay, I'm kind of into this. And I think the 80s embraced that. You don't have that sort of sexuality allowed to larger men now.
Ash is sitting there shaking her head. Ash, you wouldn't play Oak Tree Woman with Chet?
I think it's fine. I think that I don't have a problem with a dude having a little bit more meat. We talked about it in Full Monty. I think he's sexy.
Yeah, she would do it while on vacation, but then she'd call him 3 days later when she got home and break up with him.
No. He's fine. John Candy's great, but I want to take this opportunity yet again to say how wrong you are about Chris Farley and how amazing all of his movies are.
Awful.
Well, Chet returns with the rope and discovers the bald-headed bear lurking in the mine. It chases him back to the cabin and rampages through the house. Wally, the cabin owner, bursts in with a shotgun while Roman tries to hold off the animal. Chet takes the gun and shoots the bear, blowing the fur off its rear. Roaring in pain, the bear runs out of the house. The next morning, the two families part on good terms.
So in my Shat journey, what I've determined is that there are moments in movies that we watch that I don't understand why they're funny. And there's one here. And when they blow that shotgun and the bear's ass is exposed, I laughed out loud and I thought it was really funny. And I don't know why, because it's actually really horrifying. And I felt old. Maybe I'm just getting old to find a gag like this funny, but I thought it worked.
Oh, I felt horrible. Jody the bear. You know, Jody the bear, just so you know, it is actually a boy. It's an Alaskan Kodiak bear. I felt so bad. That yelp, it was like, and they kept doing it. And listen, I know that this is a movie, but I kept looking and I'm like, they put a prosthetic bald cap and a prosthetic ass on this bear. And we know in the 80s that they didn't give a shit about animals. Gene, you were on the Conan review. They actually set up trip lines that they would trip the horses. They actually gave Schwarzenegger a dead vulture that he bit. So I'm picturing, how did they get this bear down? Did they sedate him? And then this bear woke up with this shit on his ass? I felt terrible for this bear.
No, that kind of bear is pretty trainable. This is the classic, they've got them in circuses and shit like that. I'm not saying they treated the bear well, but you can train a bear to allow you to put fake things on its ass. Speaking of bears' asses, did you guys know
transitions are horrible tonight?
Did you guys know that bear dumps are a real thing? So in the movie, Chet and his son, they go to the bear dump and they're just they roll the car right up and they're just watching bears hang out going through garbage. And I was like, oh, well, that's a funny gag. This shit was real. Yellowstone Park had a bear dump where they would throw all the garbage and then people could come and see the bears rummaging through that shit. And they shut it down in the 70s for two reasons, which make a lot of sense. One, people were having interactions with the bears and getting hurt. Surprise. Yeah. And two is that the bears were getting sick because they were eating fucking garbage. So now they're trying to return them to a more natural diet, apparently not trash. And so they shut it down. And by the way, I went on some of the message boards discussing the shutdown of bear dumps and got called a fucking liberal because I said it makes sense to not have bear dumps.
Oh, I deal with this shit with my parents still, because they live and they have black bears that come out. And my parents will put piles of food on the edge of the woods. And I'm like, why the fuck are you doing that? They have flyers up around town that say a fed bear is a dead bear. I said, what the fuck are you feeding them for? Because you know what? Next time they smell barbecue, expect that fucker to come up on your deck, and then you're going to pull out your gun and shoot him. Why do you do that? Don't do it. And this is where I'm going to shift in the podcast to our public service portion of the review, where I'm going to teach you how to survive a bear attack. And they are, if it's brown, lay down. If it's black, fight back. That little piece of information will tell you what kind of bear it is and how to survive. Gene, yes, you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that's how I dealt with my diarrhea last week.
That is found. Okay, so you were brown, so you laid down. You laid down. A white bear? How many times are you going to run to a polar bear? Where are you?
Well, when you got that ash money.
Yeah. Yes.
They're man eaters. They track people for weeks.
Okay. So Ash, what'd you do at that point? Ash, you get back.
Why are you looking so incredulous?
We all live in the Sun Belt. When are we running into a polar bear?
I don't. Well, when are you running into a grizzly?
It could happen. He goes to national parks. He's an outdoorsman.
Not in Arizona. They don't have grizzlies.
He travels. He might be able to.
Maybe at your next orc smoot. You'll run into a grizzly.
Ash, next
but at least
time.
you have a sword.
Just get back on the yacht. Okay. That's how you stay away from the polar bears while you're cruising the Alaskan wilderness. But if you do find a brown bear, okay, medium to brown darkness, they are generally, they have a distinct hump on their shoulders. Okay, they use their muscles for digging roots and smashing prey. These bears are normally found in Canada. However, the populations exist in Alaska. So don't worry about the polar bears. You might run into it is a grizzly.
Yeah, this feels very counterintuitive to me because if you're telling me that this animal, it's built for digging and smashing.
Correct.
Being on the ground seems like the last fucking place. Where's there
you want to protect your head and your jugular.
That's correct.
Gene Lyon's going to help you here. My rules for fighting bears is flee and climb a tree.
No, they can run and they can climb trees.
Yes, that is true. So Gene,
you get just dead in a tree rather than dead on the ground.
Right. So Ash is correct. You want to cover your head. It's much like a plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
Curl up, cover your head, and by laying down, they're going to view you that you're not a threat. So they're going to be like, hey, I'm going to go over here and dig up some roots instead of going and smashing.
Actually, that's not inherently true because if you watch the documentary Grizzly Man, you will learn that he died because he didn't everybody knows he gets eaten. That's the whole point of the fucking documentary. But he, got eaten, and you're supposed to make noise because they don't like loud noises, which is why in the audio tape of him being killed, you hear his girlfriend, who was also eaten alive, slamming like pots and shit together to try to get them to go.
I see, but I disagree. That is a black bear, Ash. Maybe that's why he died. If you see a black bear,
him for like 4 years.
Oh, well, I think he's an amateur. Wait, how did it end for him? Did it go well?
No, it's because he brought his girlfriend out there and she smelled different. That's why they think
he didn't listen to Shat The Movies podcast where we could have saved his life, okay? Because if you see a black bear and you don't have any bear spray, what you want to do is stand your ground. You make lots of noise, so you bang those pots. So they misidentified the bear. You don't climb a tree. You fight back. It'll tell the black bear you mean business. So remember, if it's brown, lay down. If it's black, fight back. And hopefully this will save you one day.
What is a bear spray?
Oh, it's like a repellent.
It's like a Lysol can sized mace, essentially. You spray them. It's like a fogger. You never seen them? They're huge.
No, I've never seen a bear.
Yeah, it looks like a fire
spray.
extinguisher, but you spray bears with it. Bear repellent.
Yep.
Which
is made up of.
Probably smells like cat urine, something like that. That would keep me away.
So just take your bear spray or a cat with you.
Yes.
And you'll
Thank
be
you,
fine.
Big D, for instructing us.
It just sprays honey all over him. Take that, bitch. Yeah. Sarah and I, when we go hiking, each carry like 9mm subcompacts. And I was thinking the other day about like, that's no good against a bear. That's not going to do shit. It's just going to piss him off. So at least when I go down against the bear, I'll be going down with a very pissed off bear.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember is you don't need to be faster than the bear. You just need to be faster than whoever you're with.
Did you guys know that it wasn't supposed to be a bear originally? Fun fact about the Great Outdoors.
No.
Yeah. So that triumphant rescue at the end of the movie was supposed to be the guys saving the twins, Mara and Kara, from a giant fish that was pulling them around the lake. And they actually built a giant mechanical fish, but it wouldn't work right. So they had the writing staff rewrite the movie to include the bald-headed bear in Clara County, which, I mean, listen, like, it's not the greatest story, but fucking pretty decent rewrite. I didn't, I mean, I wouldn't have known unless I read it in the trivia about the movie that it was originally supposed to be a fish.
Yeah, I think that would have been an awful movie. I think the bear makes sense because it's the woods. And I have to tell you, the mine totally makes sense. Because if I were a kid and I overheard that there was some mine shaft that if I yelled into it would echo, I would have totally done what the Shining twins do in this movie and go out there and yell into the mine. So I think it worked. I mean, can you imagine those little girls in their yellow raincoats being dragged all around the lake by a big fish? It would have been like very reminiscent of like it wouldn't have worked.
I think that would have been terrifying. That would have been very dark. The bear never menaces these kids.
No.
But to have a fish like partially drowning them, the tonality, it would have been a very different ending. Very different.
Just John Candy shooting the ass off a fish. All right, now is the time when we give our wipe scores for the Great Outdoors. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butt. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a pristine lake view from your lake cabin. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is moving into a cabin that's just been occupied by fishermen with fish everywhere and a running gag for like 5 whole minutes. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for the Great Outdoors?
So I enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to. I thought it was going to be kind of lame, and it wasn't. It was fine. I think it's an average movie. It's got some really funny parts. It's got some really lame parts, and because of that, it reminded me a lot of my dad. Like, he's like 50% funny and 50% lame because he's a dad, and he's a really good dad. And it made me miss him and made me want to watch a movie like this with him and be on vacation with him again as a kid, where he would make up stories about ghosts in the woods and would take us out and do silly things like water skiing, and he would fail miserably at it. And because of that, like, I kind of saw him in John Candy, and it just made me feel good. So it's not an awful film. It's not a great film. It's an average film, but it's one I would definitely watch again with my kids and with my dad and remember what it was like going on vacations like this in the 80s and 90s. So I'm going with a perfectly average score of 2.5 wipes.
Yeah, Ash, I'm right there with you. And Adam, John, Josh, I need you to understand that although my wipe score is 2.5 wipes, this movie is so much better than I expected. Like, I saw the trailers, I was thinking other 80s movies starring Dan Aykroyd, and I was very, very worried. But I put the movie on and I was almost immediately laughing at the gags. Some of the lines in here, like, this movie deserves its own soundboard because out of context, there's just funny shit. Like, for prompt service, blow me, it's great. Or just like, I like assholes. Like, it's not just quotable, but like meme worthy movie. But let's not get carried away. The characters were great, particularly Juanita and Wally, which we didn't even talk about, the owners of the cabin. They're fucking hilarious. I think we're going to have a great time in this cabin. Yeah, if you don't get shits from the well water, which I completely sympathize with. This cast was pretty good, but overall, you called it, guys. Like, the story was paint by numbers. The animal gags were tired 80s gags. So it could not escape the era that it was in. It's not like head and shoulders above other 80s comedies, but it is a good comedy. It will make you laugh and it feels good to watch. So for me, it's another 2.5 wipes.
I totally agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. I think it's a little better than you guys think. When I turned this on, within the first couple minutes, I found myself smiling. I felt good. The movie made me happy. It made me nostalgic. As a movie, it is flawed. But what I love about it and what I really value in a movie is the heart. It is about the family. It is about Chet. And Chet is the heart of this movie. He's endearing. You love him. I really found myself wanting more of this John Candy and wishing he had survived to see what else he would have been doing. I think it really does a great job of encompassing like the difficulty of being a parent and trying to share memories that you had as a kid with the new generation. And even though, a lot of kids, you don't appreciate it. Just like I didn't appreciate what my parents did until now. And even at the end, the very last line in the movie where he's sitting with his son and he says, "To the memories." So now I don't want to go crazy and say this is a great film because it was a mix of the time I watched it, the topic, everything, the commission. But I think it is better than average, and it surprised me as well. This is a 2-wipe comedy. Thank you guys for commissioning this. It really, really made me feel good. It warmed my heart, and I appreciate your support, and I'm glad I got to watch it.
All right, so 2 wipes from Big D, 2.5 wipes each from me and Ash gives us an average wipe score for the great outdoors of 2.3 repeating.
So Gene, with the wipe score of 2.33 repeating, that now ties this in the 110 spot with Rocky IV, Point Break, Casino, Demolition Man, The Money Pit, Bram Stoker's Dracula, The Santa Claus, Ronin, Young Guns, and Species.
I'm sorry. Bram Stoker?
Stroker.
It was actually in honor of you being in your
that's really sweet. Okay, cool.
In your sleeping bag naked.
I'm okay with that. Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, John, for commissioning the great outdoors. We hope we did it justice and honored your father. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Well, next week's movie is very, very different than this week's, but it's an exciting movie nonetheless. Chris Taylor leaves his university studies to enlist in combat duty in Vietnam in 1967. Once he's on the ground in the middle of battle, his idealism fades, infighting in his unit between Staff Sergeant Barnes, who believes nearby villagers are harboring Viet Cong soldiers, and Sergeant Ellis, who has a more sympathetic view of the locals. This ends up pitting the soldiers against each other as well as against the enemy. It was commissioned by Tracy C. It was released in 1986, directed by Oliver Stone, and it was the winner of the Academy Award for Best Picture. And I'm excited beyond belief to watch this.
Mm-hmm.
The first casualty of war is innocence.
Love this movie.
That's a good one.
Well, thank you, commissioners. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. You can email us, hosts@shatthemovies.com, or call 914-719-SHAT. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, You can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
In 1967, Oliver Stone was a combat infantryman in Vietnam. During his tour, he received a Bronze Star for gallantry. 10 years later, in Hollywood, he was picking up an Oscar for the screenplay of Midnight Express. Now he has another story to tell, a movie that grew out of his own experience. Stone has come a long way from Vietnam, but he has not left it behind. Casualty.